Well, welcome back. In 2006, the Center for Affordable Housing and Finance in Africa published a study into housing entrepreneurs in South Africa. The central question of the research was, if the housing asset is not performing as a financial asset for low-income earners, might there be a different way homeowners can make money from their housing? Their findings were very significant and serve as pointers towards future policy. Now, the CAHF says that their research focused on small-scale landlords and home-based enterprises in the inner cities and in the townships of Gauteng. They say that they found that housing provides a critical platform for residents to become entrepreneurs, either as small-scale landlords or home-based enterprises, earning an income and building their asset wealth. Now, banks and policymakers have been slow, according to this research, to realize the potential of this market. If institutionally supported, this market can take off. Now, I am joined in studio by an old friend, Cobus, Truter, co-founder of Indlu, and Mbha of Black Real Estate. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you. You're most welcome at the SABC. The township property market. What an interesting time to be analyzing this on air.
Absolutely.
If you were to characterize the township market in a phrase, what would you say, Cobus?
Very exciting.
Why?
There's a lot of influx of tenants into this market. We're specifically interested in the backyard rental market. There's been a lot of development in this area in the last few years, and landowners are making stable income out of their properties, and it's largely fueled by urbanization and people moving into the metropolitan areas in the townships.
Massive inflows from rural areas and from north of the continent.
Absolutely.
TT, what does the market look like from your end of town? I understand that you run a very high market operation, and there are very many high market properties coming into the market in the townships, especially areas like Deep Kloof in Soweto. Can you talk?
100%.
Yeah.
There is a definite increase in the value of different properties in the townships. And as you rightly mentioned, areas like Deep Kloof, Pimville, Protea, they're growing in terms of the value of the properties that are being sold. But
Can you give me an estimation, perhaps, now, how much would the really nice house go for in Deep Kloof? 3 bedroomed, 2 bathrooms, guest bathroom downstairs, nice open plan lounge and dining space?
You'd be surprised that you can get a property as per the description that you've just stated for anything between 8 to 1.1 million. The market is quite active in those areas, purely because it offers...
You mean 800,000
to 1.1 million, yes.
I would say that's a depressed price, wouldn't you?
Not if you look at the history of the property market in the township specifically. And as you've realized, there's been an influx of growth in terms of shopping malls and hospitals and schools. And I think because of the activity that's grown in the townships, it's obviously helped with increasing the property values in those specific townships. But I still think and believe that there's a lot more work that still needs to be done, specifically in that space where we need to grow more schools, build more hospitals, and more amenities so that people in the townships can actually get services within the townships. They don't have to go to the suburban areas to get those services at the end of the day.
Now, is there a CAHSEE price for a beautiful house, and is there a northern suburbs price? And what would you say is the price difference on average?
Well, I think on average it goes back to the point that everyone will tell you about location. You take a typical house in Deep Kloof, which you can get for, let's say, R1 million. Take the exact same house and put it in Sandton, and you can triple the price, purely because of the location and purely because of the value per square meter of each area that we're dealing with. So there is a significant difference.
Talk to me about the rental market. What are the dynamics that we need to take heed of in this particular market?
Well, there's about 850,000 backyard landlords at the moment renting their properties. I think their biggest constraint at this point is access to capital. Even though they have significant income, passive income from the rental that they collect, that income is not recognized by the commercial banks, which only looks at salaried income. So I believe that if there can be more specific financial products targeted for these landlords, they would be able to upgrade their backyard facilities, which would increase their income and would make a dent in the massive housing backlog that we have in the country.
Okay, let's talk valuations. Because I think that getting a formal valuation from a bank or done by valuation experts is one way of beginning the formalization of township houses and unearthing what we are calling on the show and what economists have referred to as dead capital. Mm-hmm. So how difficult is it to get a nice, decent valuation on a township property?
Well, the way we look at it is you can almost calculate it on a cap rate basis, on a yield basis, like you would on a commercial project, because all of these properties are income generating because of the rental that is there. So the way we look at it, and I'm specifically looking at it out of the rental point of view, you can almost say, what is my expected yield? And based on that, we've seen high valuations in the townships. I mean, even if you can go on to Property 24 right now, and you will find properties in Soweto or Tembisa that would be selling for over 2 million rand.
Wow.
And that would be based on the income. If you look at the photos, you'll see that there's about 10 to 20 rental properties on that side generating income. But people are starting to look at these residential sites as businesses or assets, which is skewing, I think, the normal property valuations for maybe a single family dwelling.
Now I want to talk about Villa Ghazi Street. Villa Ghazi Street is perhaps the best known street in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And it has 3 Nobel Prize winners who lived on that street. And it's a booming tourist attraction. Are properties rising in that area? Are we seeing significant gentrification? Now, gentrification could be a good thing and a bad thing for ordinary people. Talk to me about how you see the trajectory of that street. How is it going to go?
Do you want me to take that?
Yes.
With pleasure. Of course, Villa Ghazi being such a well-known street across the world would obviously over time increase with value. But what we've seen from a sales point of view is the reluctance of a lot of homeowners to actually let go of those properties. There's a lot of sentiment that comes with these properties. Your grandmother's house that you've inherited, and so it goes. But specifically when it comes to these backroom issues and the evaluation part when it comes to sales, the biggest challenge for the evaluators is the fact that most of these backroom establishments are actually not approved by the council, which becomes a big issue for an evaluator
municipal
to say.
Bylaws.
Of course, if it's not approved, it's pretty difficult for an evaluator to actually put what the real value of that property is. You have a structure at the back that is probably 100 squares under roof, but it's not recognized because it's not approved in terms of the plans of the council, which makes it difficult when you have to sell on that particular property. That's the biggest challenge. Maybe for rentals it's a little bit different, but when it comes to sales, it does pose a challenge when you're trying to try and get out as much value from that property as you can, because if it's not approved, it really doesn't exist.
If it's not
on
approved,
paper,
it doesn't exist,
and
hence
deed.
it's dead capital.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about title deeds. In townships, we've had for generations the 99-year lease on the typical matchbox home. And in all our families, we've got that typical home. And there's, as you say, a lot of sentiment to how that home is either mortgaged or treated by generations. So how can it be that 25 years into democracy and we're still discussing how to deal with the apartheid 99-year lease on township homes?
Well, in townships, we typically see people having title deeds. The problem being more that they don't always administer the title deeds. So they inherit property, but the admin lags, which is causing dead capital, because it's now the title deed is not in
bureaucracy.
In the name of the occupant, who's by the standard of the community the legal occupant or owner of that property, but the title deed doesn't necessarily reflect that. And so we're seeing that as a constraint, that and people actually trading properties without doing the administration of the title deeds.
Let's talk about zoning for business and for residential use. It's a bit mixed in the township at the moment. When we spent a day out there looking at the properties in particular, we saw that people would pull a room and then make a spaza shop, or pull a room and make a hairdresser. And people would also have a number of back rooms that they're renting out to people. So there's a blurring of the lines between what is really residential and what is business zoning. So how do you see the future of that panning out?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, there's official zoning. The different townships have got different zonings. And it's mostly residential one, which really means you cannot legally do business there, but people obviously still do. They rent it out, the pieces of the yard, rent it out to retailers that put up little formal stores. What we have seen is some of the municipalities catching on. For instance, as far as my knowledge goes, almost the entire Mamelodi has been rezoned to Res 5, which now gives a much broader spec of rights, which now obviously validates a lot of these activities and actually increase the value of those properties.
Well, gentlemen, we've run out of time. But I want to ask you a yes or no answer question, right? I want you to know, I want you to tell us, where is this market going? Yes and no? One word.
Where is it going?
Yeah.
Upwards.
Upwards. Nana, please weigh in on this discussion.
Active citizenship that demands economic development strategies can be deployed, and using housing as an economically productive asset that makes an important contribution to the South African economy should and can be supported by policy. May security be yours, dear viewer. So long and good night.